Okay, so this is my spoiler review of Man of Steel. If you haven't seen the movie and you don't like spoilers, go watch my non-spoiler review. Alright, so if you want to know how my overall thoughts on the film go, check out the non-spoiler review. That's basically giving my overall opinion. But this is going to be a very detail-oriented spoiler review about things that I liked, didn't like about the movie. I'm going to start off with my biggest problem, and then I'm going to go kind of character by character. I think that's the easiest way to break it down. Alright, so my biggest problem, by far and away, and it probably only would annoy comic book readers, is that at the end of the film, Superman is forced to break Zod's neck to stop him from killing a family. And if you read comic books, you will know that this is something that Wonder Woman did to Maxwell Lord to stop him from controlling Superman and killing people. And it was really pivotal to the character. And I'm kind of annoyed that Zack Snyder, he did this in Watchmen. He takes things that female characters do and gives them to male characters. And it's infuriating because that's kind of like one of the best things, one of the most interesting, not the best obviously, but one of the most interesting things that Wonder Woman ever did. And it really spoke volumes as to how she was, what set her apart from Superman and Batman, how she was different in DC's Trinity, that she was the warrior, that she was the only one willing to do the things that needed to be done. And I think that to take that away from her and to give it to Superman, it's very upsetting to me, not only as a comic book reader, but also as a female comic book reader. And also just as a female audience member, I'm really kind of sick of this. It's really frustrating and annoying to me. Also, I don't believe that Superman would kill. I just feel, and I'd be curious, I guess that's unrealistic if you're going for a realistic environment, okay, in a movie. But I really am curious to see how mainstream moviegoers are going to perceive that, if that might just be too much for them. Because, it's like Batman never really had to kill anybody. And, that's Batman. He's the darker of the two. So I think that if anyone's going to be accepting of that in a movie, it would be, of a Batman film. But to see it in the Superman film, I'm just really curious if that's going to alienate anybody. All right, so let's start off going character by character, because that was like my biggest problem, and I really wanted to talk about that and make that point. But let's go character to character. Let's start out, I guess in the order we meet them to some degree. We start out on Krypton. I thought it was, because they were going for such a realistic approach in this movie, I found it very distracting that Krypton had very different animals and technology, yet their species, the humanoid species, was not just humanoid, but was basically human. Like when you saw them and use their X-ray vision, they had the same bone structure. I think that some explanation needs to be there. And I think that the movie kept hinting at it to some degree. I don't know if it was intentionally or not, but with these exploratory missions where they had outposts on different planets, including Earth, and then also the Codex, which looked like a human skull to me a little bit, or maybe a nomad skull. So it made me wonder, were Kryptonians descended from Earth, from humans? Were we really related? Especially if you're going for this realistic approach, what is the likelihood you'd have two such similar species? And I wonder if that's something that's going to be saved for a later film, but I found it a little bit distracting here. And also that they had different races on Krypton that matched human races, and for some reason they had like a Joseph Mengele type Kryptonian doctor, and who had like a German accent. It was just a little, it was a little bizarre. But I did like what Russell Crowe did, very much so, with his role, and I thought he looked a lot like Henry Cavill, so it was good casting. I bought him as his father. But I thought Russell Crowe did better in the scenes on Earth when he was the artificial intelligence. I thought that was handled really well. But I think he was saddled with a lot of exposition and not any time to develop it in the beginning of the movie. But, of course, he's Russell Crowe. He handled those action scenes very well. Zod. Zod, as I said in my non-spoiler review, I felt Zod was just a little comical and over the top. But this is, and I mentioned that there was a problem with his character, a really big problem. And the problem is that at the end of the movie, he has a great speech about how he is genetically, everyone on Krypton is genetically bred to fill a role, and he is genetically bred to protect Krypton. And that is his whole purpose for being. And so that's why he kind of loses it at the end when he feels he has no more purpose in life. And that was fascinating to me. The whole movie, I was like, boy, these Kryptonians, Zod's people they're pure evil. They're jerks. The actress who played Faora on the red carpet had said, oh, well, we're just trying to protect our people. There's grays. And I'm like, no, there's no grays here. This is black and white. But I think it's important. It was important to establish that it was black and white for a reason, because these people were genetically encoded to think in black and white. And that was such a great concept, I felt, but not explored. And it was like too late to really factor in. And I wish that had been set up better. I think I would have really liked that. And I think it would have made Clark feel more special, because he was the one person on Krypton who had almost, I guess you could say, free will, because he was not genetically engineered to do anything in particular. Although you'd think he'd be a mix of what Jor-El and Lara were coded to be, because that's how genetics work. But anyway, and also Laura, I thought the actress did a nice job, but it was really kind of a thankless role. And I wondered why, because she was also a scientist, it seemed, why she didn't program her own AI. It's like almost like Jarell went behind her back and was like, I'm going to know our son and you're not. And so I was like, oh, it would have been nice to have both parents here. So Henry Cavill. As I said in my non-spoiler review, really liked him a lot, actually. I thought he did a great job in being this emo Superman, this very pensive, quiet, still waters run deep kind of guy, and he really sold it. I liked him, I thought he did a good job in the suit. I thought he did a good job as Clark Kent. I thought he was really good. As I also said in the non-spoiler review, Lois Lane, no chemistry there. And I felt that, Amy Adams is, I think, about 10 years older than Henry Cavill, and, hey, I'm not going to judge anybody. Whoever falls in love is great. That's wonderful. But, I think it's nice for a change of pace to see an older actress paired with a younger actor. But you could really tell their age difference here. And so they just didn't seem like a match. They didn't have any chemistry either. It wasn't like, they're so different and they're different ages and they come from different worlds, but they have great chemistry. That just wasn't there. And I really felt that he just fell in love with Lois because she was just there. He was lonely and there was Lois. And I talked a little bit about, the way Lois was filmed, so check that out in the non-spoiler review. But I did like the angle, by the way, with the character of Lois, I liked her decision not to report on Superman not to report the story because she understood. It was almost like E.T., it was like Lois was the little kid and she was like, I'm not going to ruin his life. So that made sense to me, although I will say the fact that Perry White also didn't want to report it made no sense to me. I mean, I don't understand how a guy in a company who didn't meet the personal side of the story, whose job it is to report to report the truth and to report news, of course there's that discussion of how to report it responsibly and how to shape the story, but I think to just decide to sweep it under the rug is just what goes against everything that journalism stands for. So I thought that was odd. But I did like that in one scene in the movie, she's supposed to be protecting her source. And she doesn't want to give up who Kal-El is to Earth. I thought that was great. And I hope it's because she was just protecting her source. I would hope that it wasn't because she was in love with him. Because I think that the former is a more interesting and a better role for a woman. I would say outside of Lois, though, while Lois was handled well, and I think Nolan and Snyder, who have a history of not doing a good job with female characters, kind of acquitted themselves a little bit there. I thought the other female characters in the movie were just awful. Except for Feora. Feora was amazing. I'll get to her in a second. But I thought that the soldier whose only line was that she had the hots for Superman to her commanding officer was so unprofessional. I was like, Superman's not going to date you and you just ruined your credibility for nothing. So I thought that was a problem. And also I didn't like that Jenny Olsen, or whatever maybe she's not Jenny Olsen, but I hated the fact that she was the only one getting into trouble and she kept making poor Perry White and Steve Lombard come back to rescue her. It's like, come on, are you kidding me here? And then I also felt bad for Steve when they thought they were going to all die, and Jenny and Perry kept looking at each other, and I'm like, you guilted Steve Lombard into coming back here and helping you, and then you're going to make him die feeling alone. You guys aren't even going to acknowledge him at this last final moment, and then they all kind of ragged on him at the bullpen afterwards when he had those tickets. I was like, Jenny, the man helped try and save your life. I think you can just go to one game with him. So I didn't like that. But Feora was amazing. I thought Feora was a far superior villain to Zod. I would love to see her come back. I'm glad that she could potentially come back because she's only been sucked back into the Phantom Zone. But she was phenomenal. Really well done. The Kents, I thought there was a great movie somewhere with the Kents, but this wasn't it. I thought Diane Lane was hamming it up a little bit, playing old, I mean, it was almost reminded me sometimes of like a high school student who's tasked with playing old, and you're like, you're not that old, and you're just kind of like making a raspy voice and limping around and holding your back, and you put glasses around your neck. I mean, it was not great acting on her part. She was sympathetic, but it was weak. Kevin Costner, phenomenal job. Really great. And I thought the concern and worry he had for his son at his own expense was brilliant. A great twist, and I really wish that could have been explored more. And as I said, the tornado scene, and I said in my non-spoiler review, I wish the tornado scene had been longer, because the Clark Kent Jonathan Kent tells him not to save him because he'd expose himself and is willing to sacrifice his own life for the safety of his son, is fascinating on both sides. It's fascinating that Jonathan Kent felt that strongly about it, and I think that should have been explored, that if Clark Kent was ever going to expose what he could do and become a hero, I think that would be so difficult to think, well, maybe why didn't I do it earlier? Why didn't I rescue my father? And I think that would make him reluctant to be that hero, because he's like, if I didn't do it then, how can I do it now? And so that was a great scene. It was a great idea, but it was just so fast-forwarded and so quick that I think that it was robbed of all its emotional resonance for the movie. And so I think that's about basically the main cast members. I mean, the other people are kind of really throwaway. like Emil Rensing, Dr. Emil Rensing had like nothing to do. It was crazy. So that's how my thoughts. That's my spoiler thoughts on the movie. As I said, check out how I feel about the Justice League, if there can be a Justice League movie, over in my non-spoiler review. But, you know, you could pick this movie apart. As I said in the non-spoiler review, it's very Dark Knight Rises in that there's just great ideas that are sloppily taped together and not explored and are underdeveloped. But there's true potential here. And I hope that they, you know, as I said again, get rid of Snyder, get rid of Goyer, bring in a different creative team, but keep this cast. And I think that they might actually have something really good for the second film. So that's my thoughts on Man of Steel. I hope you enjoyed the spoiler review. It's meant to be watched with the non-spoiler review, so I hope you check them both out. And be sure to come back on Friday afternoon, East Coast time, for the audience reaction to Man of Steel. I'm very curious to see what people have to say about it. All right, thanks for watching. Bye.